A frustrating weekend walking away from Mexico with no points. Car pace is there. You could see that both with qualifying with Alex, but also Franco's race pace. We have the ability to be fighting for points. But every weekend needs clean execution and no issues in order for us to achieve that. The midfield is so tight now that just milliseconds are separating nearly 5 teams. In terms of the weekend on the whole, obviously FP1, Alex had that very large accident with Beerman. As he went into the section, the high-speed section, Beerman was on the racing line and it ended up with a very large accident. As Alex lifted, he lost control of the car and collided, and the damage was extensive. As we then went into the race, it was a racing incident, but 3 cars trying to fit into 2 spaces will never go. I think we definitely came up worse than most others as a result of that, and there's very large damage to the car from that. In terms of Franco, it was just simply one tiny mistake in turn 3 of the snap, but just led to a loss of around about 2/10, and that was more than sufficient to mean that you don't go through nowadays into Q2. His race pace, however, was very, very strong. You saw that he was able to take the fight to the teams in front of him, and had he not been starting out of position, I think we had a really good opportunity with him as well. So it's disappointing to walk away without points, and probably more significantly, Alpine scored a point and Haas had a very good weekend with themselves ahead in the championship. There's still 5 races to go, and there's still plenty of opportunity to come. We have 2 more sprint races, one of which is now in Brazil. And Brazil is typically a track where there is very much opportunity, either through weather or through very different conditions than you have in most other places. So I think the car will go very well there. In terms of looking back at Mexico, and again focusing on the positives, the atmosphere and the environment was incredible. As you walk up and down the paddock, near enough there was a whole gathering of individuals around Franco as he moved between garage to garage. And it was great to see. I think he's really performing exceedingly well. And the reward from that is that the world is really embracing him at the same time. Welcome to the Vowles Verdict, presented by Kraken. I think first and foremost, this is a very difficult subject with a lot of emotion attached to it. What I would say is the stewards are in a very difficult spot. They have to adjudicate whether or not we're letting drivers race too hard, or whether or not, as a result of accidents or otherwise, or positional changes, the place should be given back. We want the drivers to be racing. We don't want to restrict it such that we're not on track fighting each other tooth and nail, because that's what we're here for. But conversely, there needs to be boundaries by which we're not simply pushing the other car off the track or causing an accident. And that's the fine line that the stewards adjudicate. My opinion of their response to Verstappen was correct. He had to be penalised for that. The defence was incorrect at that point. You can't run yourself and another car off track as a result of things. And I think the correct actions are being taken, whereby there's been an open forum discussion with the drivers on the weekend, which will then result, I believe, in a change over the course of the next few races. So that's a positive direction of travel. We need to make sure, as I say, we don't lose the fact that we're racing each other. My frustration perhaps more is that in the case of Franco, I think that was a harsh penalty, especially penalty points in the license, for what I think is just racing hard but fairly. Lawson ran the car out. There wasn't really any room on track left for Franco, and Franco just kept the line going into the next corner. It wasn't an intention to cause an accident. And I feel on that particular account, again, it's a fine line, but on the wrong side of it in the case of what we've received as a penalty. As we go through these following races though, I think what you're going to see now that the field is so tight is you're going to see this more and more and more. The championship battle, whether you're looking at the constructors between ourselves, Haas, RB, Alpine, or whether you're looking at the front between McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull, is incredibly tight. And that just means you have to fight tooth and nail for every single point on that championship. And that will create these incidents as we are very close to one another. Same in Brazil, there was plenty of opportunity. For example, turn 3, where if you remember a few years ago, there was an incident there too. That allows you to have 2 cars side by side and just push track. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens across that weekend. Short answer, no. Franco had already started on the hard tyre relative to Alex medium, and our intention was to really offset, either to maximise an opportunity with a safety car later in the race, or certainly create a situation where we could create as much free air as possible for Franco by offsetting ourselves to our rivals. And Alex's DNF had no impact on that strategy. I think it's a good question on crashes. it's an enormous drag on the system, where what we're focused on now is just making sure we have sufficient spares for Brazil and beyond, rather than perhaps some future development or R&D that we would be doing otherwise. In the case of Alex, both crashes were really quite large in the end of it. And the resultant behind that is that we have spares that have to come back here to the UK, be repaired, turned around, and sent back out now to Brazil on a short turnaround time. And especially with the sprint race weekend, you need a good allocation of spares, because you are creating two more racing circumstances, each one with their own risks attached. We learn a tremendous amount. Every race weekend, the intention is to not just optimize the car for that weekend, but also do future learning and understanding. So there's a few things in Mexico that came forward from that. First and foremost, we had the 2025 tires available to us. Now, Alex wasn't able to run those, but Franco did. And we learned a lot about how that tire is changing for next year. It was a softer compound in our case, but gave us some good learning as to direction of travel, which optimizes the FW47 direction that we need to be taking. The second learning is we're continuously evolving on what we're doing on setup, learning about, for example, the new front suspension that we have on the car, the aero package that we have on the car, but also how to use electronic systems and tools. And in all of those areas, I'm confident we walked away with Mexico with a better understanding as to how to extract car performance. So the right weekends are when you're learning not just about that specific moment in time, but everything for the future too. And for Mexico, I feel we walked away with a good understanding.